Welcome back to Look Recap. Today I will show you a horror, sci-fi film from 2000, titled Hollow Man. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Sebastian is running a simulation of a chemical formula on his computer, but it fails. At that moment, his neighbor comes home. He peeks in on his neighbor undressing and is disappointed when she closes the curtains. A few moments later, he suddenly gets an idea, redesigns the chemical equation, and runs the simulation again. Sebastian calls Linda and tells her the solution. When he sees the man sleeping in her bed, she tells him it's none of his business. He shows Linda the chemically reduced solution he cracked. Linda wakes Matt up and tells him they need to go to the lab. Linda suggests that they should take their own car, but Matt thinks she needs to tell Sebastian about them. In the morning, Sebastian arrives at the heavily guarded lab. He scans his fingerprints to enter the elevator and gives the code. There are invisible animals in the lab that can only be seen through thermal imaging. Matt pets the orangutan named Isabella and greets her. Isabella is agitated and freaks out all the animals when she jumps around the cage. Matt puts on a thermal imaging camera and sees Isabel. As he prepares to sedate Isabel, she bites him and runs away. Matt chases her through the lab and runs into Sebastian. Sebastian takes a tranquilizer gun and Matt makes a bet on who will find her first. Eventually Isabella is caught. Sebastian anesthetized Isabella. Sarah thinks it's unethical, but Sebastian thinks it will save time. He overrules her objections. Linda joins them and reminds Sebastian that he hired Sarah because she is the best vet in the country. Sarah tells him that the gorilla is doing well, and Carter walks in and says he's just on medical standby. Frank calls from tech and tells them they're ready too. Linda locks the serum in the syringe gun and Matt prepares the injection. Sarah looks for a vein in Isabel's arm and Sebastian takes the syringe gun from Matt and says he'll finish. He injects Isabel with the serum, which visibly flows through her veins and body. Her heartbeat accelerates. The gorilla's body begins to appear and they are happy that the serum is working. Suddenly, Isabella's condition began to deteriorate. Her heart stopped beating and Linda shocked her with a defibrillator. She kept doing this several times until her heart started beating again. As Isabel began to stabilize, her body continued to become visible. The technicians told them that her quantum signal had stabilized. Everyone was happy for the success. Later, together, they take her back to her cage. Sebastian tells Sarah to get her ready for Monday's vivisection, and Sarah is furious, but Matt convinces her that Sebastian was joking. Linda rushes to ease the tension and suggests they go celebrate their success. Everyone celebrates at a restaurant. Then Linda has a heart-to-heart with Sebastian, who wants to get back together with her. But Linda refuses. Sebastian goes back to the lab to see Isabel. There was another invisible dog there, and he petted it and asked it what it was like to be invisible. Shortly afterward, Sebastian presents their research to a committee at the Pentagon. Dr. Kramer asks Sebastian how they solved the reduction problem, and Sebastian lies and says they haven't yet, which surprises Linda and Matt. Kramer says they need to see results soon or he'll find someone to replace them. Linda and Matt are furious, but Sebastian explains that if they report their findings, the Pentagon will take over their program entirely. His next idea is to conduct his own human trials without authorization. Matt worries that they'll get in trouble. Later, they tell the team about the plan and no one supports it. Sebastian tries to convince them, but Sarah doesn't believe the committee approved the plan. Sebastian doesn't care what they think, he tells them to go through with it anyway. On the day of the surgery, Matt tells Sebastian he can change his mind, but Sebastian just makes fun of him. Entering the lab, Sebastian lies on a bed and is hooked up to an IV. His heart rate is rising, and he says he's feeling a little nervous. Frank and Janice argue about who will get his Porsche if he dies. They install the serum and take it to Sebastian, who wants to inject it himself, saying the others will be blamed if something goes wrong. He injects the serum, but nothing happens to his body. Suddenly, Sebastian starts to feel something. He starts twitching and his whole body starts to become invisible. Sebastian says it's stronger than he expected. Stank tells them that he is on the verge of a seizure. As he went invisible, his vitals became more erratic. They prepare the defibrillator, but Matt tells them not to use the defibrillation. When his vitals stabilized, he went completely invisible. Matt says he's fine, but due to the trauma, he's in shock. 17 hours later, Sebastian woke up screaming and demanding that Linda and Matt turn off the lights. Sebastian gets up and walks to the mirror, then the three of them come to the lab, where he immediately begins to pull pranks, and Frank doesn't see him until he uses his thermal imaging glasses. Matt and Linda take him back to his room and turn on the observation monitor. Sarah turns on the observation monitors in the observation room. She will be working the first shift. It doesn't take long for her to fall asleep and Sebastian goes through the ladder and into the observation room. Sebastian begins to touch her. Suddenly Sarah wakes up and asks Sebastian if he's here, then checks the monitors, but as soon as she turns around, he's back in bed. The next day, she tells Linda about it, but she's not sure if it really happened and feels terrible. Later, during another routine checkup, Sarah was removing medical equipment from him when Sebastian made her feel very uncomfortable. Once, when Janice went to the bathroom, she felt like someone was watching her, so she put on her thermal imager goggles to pee. After lunch, she tells Carter what happened. The team talks about Sebastian and what he might do after he goes invisible. They all seem to agree that he won't do anything good. Until they leave the kitchen and a seemingly empty chair turns around. Turns out he had been listening to them. Linda was on duty in the lab that night. She's working on the serum when Sebastian starts playing pranks and moving her coca tank around the lab. It's Sebastian's last night in his invisible state, and tomorrow he's going to be subjected to a reduction experiment. He asks Linda if she wants to know what it would be like to have sex with an invisible person. Linda refuses his request. The next day, Matt and Carter prepare the reversion serum and Linda sprays a special liquid on his arm so they can see his veins. After the serum is injected, it travels down the veins to his heart, just like Isabella did earlier. The moment his organs begin to emerge, something bad happens and he begins to suffocate and his vitals become unstable. Sarah realizes his lungs are stuck and has Carter intubate him. Sebastian breaks free. He pushes Carter away with incredible strength and kicks Matt away from himself. Sarah and Linda intubate him before he disappears again and Matt presses on his heart. The experiment fails and he disappears again and goes into shock. Sebastian wakes up with Linda by his side. She tells him he almost died. She says the committee isn't sure of the status. So he's going to be in this state for a while, so they make him a synthetic mask. Linda cuts a slit for his mouth and 2 holes for his eyes while he's wearing the mask. Matt brought him a mirror so he could see himself. Now they need to figure out what went wrong as soon as possible. Matt says he's not a genius like Sebastian and can come to the right conclusion right away. 10 days later, Sebastian is physically ill from all the tests they did on him. He and Matt argue about it and then Linda comforts him. Sebastian said they hadn't done enough for him. That night, he can't stand being there anymore, so he decides to leave. He tells Carter, but Carter says he can't leave because the rules don't allow it. Sebastian ignores him. Carter calls and tells Linda. Sebastian sees the cop outside the lab, who says his car hasn't moved in a long time, and then he drives out of the lab. He stops at a stoplight and the kids next to him say that Sebastian looks weird, so he takes off his sunglasses and the kids freak out. Linda and Matt leave the apartment and go back to the lab. Matt tries to hug Linda and Linda tells him Sebastian could be anywhere. Sebastian goes back to his apartment and grabs a few things to take back to the lab, then he sees his neighbor undressing again. He has evil thoughts. While his female neighbor is in the shower, the doorbell rings. The woman sees no one in the hallway, but the doorbell rings again, so she opens the door and goes out. That was enough for Sebastian to come inside. He follows her to her room and looks at her. He moves her mirror and scares her. Sebastian grabs her and rapes her. Meanwhile, Linda comes to his apartment looking for him. The door is unlocked, so she walks in and sees that he left his mask there. Sebastian leaves his neighbor's apartment and sees Linda in his apartment. Back at the lab, everyone is ready to go find him. Suddenly, Sebastian arrives and tells them that he just went to his apartment to get some things. Linda confronts him and tells him what she saw in his apartment, and Matt asks why he was out in public. Sebastian says that he is still in charge of the program and it is his decision. Linda threatens him that if he leaves the lab again, she'll report him to the committee. When everyone leaves, Sarah learns from Linda that the committee doesn't know what they did, but she promises to keep quiet. Linda and Matt wonder if Sebastian's invisibility has begun to affect his mind. The next day, Carter was examining Sebastian and they talked about what Sebastian had done out there that night. Sebastian did not tell Carter. That night, Linda was sleeping when Sebastian pulled back her covers and was about to undress her. Suddenly, her phone rings and she wakes up from her nightmare. Matt tells her that he thinks he's found a solution. Next, they explain it to Sebastian and the rest of the team in the lab. They run a simulation and it only reaches 95% before it starts to crash, which sends Sebastian into a spiral of anger and he leaves. Later that night, he comes up with the idea of tampering with the security cameras and tells Frank he's going to the lab. He gets some tools and alters the camera. His shadow then appears in the screen and he appears to be there. Afterward, he goes to Linda's apartment to spy on her. Sebastian sees Matt walk into her apartment and it pisses him off, so he breaks the window when they go to the other room to have sex. Matt doesn't see anything and Linda calls the lab to check if Sebastian is there. Frank sees him on the installed cameras. Sebastian goes back to the lab and he's pissed. The dog kept barking, which made him even angrier, so he walked over to the cage and brutally killed the dog. The next day, Sarah finds the dog. She immediately confronted Sebastian, but he did nothing. They viewed the security footage, which showed him in bed all night. At night, Linda is in her room and she senses Sebastian is there. She is nervous and puts a blanket over where she thinks he is standing. She was so scared she ran out of the apartment and into her car. Linda drives to the lab. Matt told her Sebastian was asleep, but she went to check his room anyway. She realizes that Sebastian is missing and guesses that he tampered with the camera. Linda calls everyone back to the lab. Janice asked if they were going to look for him, but Linda thought they should go to the committee. Matt says he goes out night after night and they don't know what he's doing. However, Sebastian is there to hear what they say. They then go to Kramer's house and Sebastian arrives. Kramer says he will call all the necessary people and he sends Linda and Matt out the door. Kramer goes to make a call, but his phone line is down. He hears the door slam and walks into the yard. Sebastian appears in the smoke from his pipe and pushes him into the pool, drowning him. Then Sebastian escapes. The next day, Linda returns to the lab and Sebastian says they will be busy today. Kramer didn't call them back, so Linda called him. His wife tells her that he drowned. Linda tries to call a general, but the phone lines are down. Matt checks the phones and realizes they have no outside line, so they go to notify security. When they go into the elevator, their code becomes invalid. They come back and tell the others. Frank checks the security system and realizes that the system is fine. It was Sebastian who removed all their access. They grab their thermal imaging glasses and leave, only Janice forgets hers. When she returns, Sebastian kills her. They search for him in the lab. Sebastian tells them that he can't let them turn him in because he enjoys his specialness too much. He also tells them that Kramer died before he could tell anyone. Linda realizes Janice isn't there, so they run to find her. They find her in a locker. Carter thinks Sebastian is crazy, but Matt thinks he planned everything because he knew they would turn him in. Sarah slaps Linda and says she could have stopped the experiment. Frank agrees with her. Carter just wants to know what they should do. Linda said they couldn't wait around. The team activates the motion detectors and sees him on the monitors. Matt and Carter go to look for him. Linda spots him on the monitor. Matt prepares to go and put him down, but it turns out to be just a vent. Sebastian grabs Carter, and when Matt turns around he starts shooting, hitting a pipe. Sebastian can be seen due to the water vapor, so he shoots him again. Carter is badly hurt. Linda tells Matt that Sebastian is here, so he shoots the pipe again and is able to see him, but Sebastian escapes and locks Matt in the tunnel. Linda goes out to help Matt and tells the others to find Carter. Matt tries to see him another way, and they argue over Linda, and Matt hits him. Just as Sebastian manages to knock him out, Linda saves him. Meanwhile, Sarah and Frank find Carter. She leaves Frank there to apply pressure to his wounds until she gets blood for a transfusion. Sarah gets a couple packets of blood from the lab when she hears Sebastian come in. She pours the blood on the floor and waits for him. When he didn't show up, she grabbed the last remaining packet of blood and walked to the other door. Then he grabbed her from the other side of the room. Sebastian gets the upper hand and shoots her with a tranquilizer gun, then breaks her neck. Meanwhile, Linda and Matt find Frank after Carter's death. They return to the lab. Linda finds Sarah. Then Sebastian kills Frank while his back is turned. He also injures Matt and locks them in the refrigerator. Linda tapes Matt's wound. Meanwhile, Sebastian prepares to escape. Matt is unconscious and Linda tries to break out of the freezer. She comes up with an idea. Meanwhile, Sebastian wants to blow up everything in the lab. He concocts a mixture that will explode like a grenade. Linda created a magnet with the defibrillator and used it to pull a lever to open the door. She takes Matt outside and lights a fire to keep him warm. Before leaving, Linda takes a hydrogen tank. Meanwhile, Sebastian puts the concocted bomb into the experimental device and sets it for 5 minutes. As he steps into the elevator, Linda catches up to him and lights him on fire. The flame melts into him. Soon Linda's flamethrower runs out of fuel and Sebastian escapes. Then she activated the sprinkler system. He sneaks up on her and beats her, trying to kill her. Suddenly, Matt appears and knocks him out. Sebastian is still alive and he attacks them again, but is accidentally electrocuted. His body is no longer invisible. They find the bomb and run into the elevator shaft. Matt goes first, followed by Linda. The bomb explodes and the elevator flies up the shaft. They duck in time, but the elevator descends again, stopping right in front of them. They continue up the shaft, when Sebastian grabs Linda, and as they struggle, the elevator falls again. Linda and Sebastian struggle, and when Sebastian kisses her, she grabs the cable and the elevator drops. Sebastian falls into the fire and Linda crawls to Matt. They both make it out of the lab alive. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like, it really helps the channel. Thank you for watching.